Let's fly a standard pattern from Santa Barbara Airport. I chose SBA since it's nearly at sea level and therefore MSL and AGL will be pretty much the same for simplicity, but you'll need to adjust your target altitudes for other airports that are significantly above sea level. Flying standard patterns in X-plane is a good way to practice control of the airplane and energy management, especially for touching down precisely where you intend to. It also builds consistent structure for approaching and landing at any other airfield, especially untowered or unimproved airstrips. The pattern will consist of our upwind takeoff or go around leg, a turn to crosswind, a turn to downwind, a base leg turn, and then final.
Alright, so I'm at Santa Barbara Airport. I'm holding short of runway 15 right at Charlie. I'm going to be using 15 right to fly just a standard right pattern. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's go fuel pump on, mixtures full, rich fuel is set on both. Let's go strobe and landing lights on, and we're entering the runway. Entering runway 15 right at Charlie. And I've got my compass and my directional indicators synced up, so that should be good. That's what we can use as our main cue for trying to stay on our turns in the pattern as closely as possible. Again, correcting for any wind at the airport. But let's see here. Okay, so we are lined up on 15 right. Directional indicator shows 15, compass shows 15. And we're ready to go. It's mixture full rich and taking off. Just gonna let it lift off on its own. There's 55, 60. Okay, I'll pull a little bit of back pressure. Stay in runway heading, roughly climbing 10 degrees, but looking for 73 on the airspeed, which is VY for a Cessna 172. So we'll stay between roughly 70 and 75 if we can. Again, flying runway heading. Now, I'm upwind right now. I would make my crosswind turn if I'm staying in the pattern at 700 feet AGL. If I were going to depart the area, say on a cross country or just leaving the airport, I would start making my turn at 400 AGL. So there goes 400. I'm going to stay till 700. Again, just watching my airspeed, staying on runway heading. Coming up to 600 feet, full throttle. Coming up to 700, I'm going to start making my turn toward crosswind. And I can look at my directional indicator to see when it is straight at my 9 o'clock. That'll roughly tell me when I can roll out on crosswind. Coming up to 1,000 feet, which is pattern altitude. Still rolling out there. Okay, so now I'm on my crosswind leg. Look over, there's the airport. I'm on crosswind. Still climbing up to 1,000 pattern altitude. Alright, now I can pull back the throttle a little bit, start applying a little nose down trim. And when staying in the pattern, I usually use somewhere between 2,000 and 2,200 RPM. Don't need to go super fast. It's controllable. It's a good speed. Okay, there's the airport. I'm going to use the end of runway 25 as roughly my turning point, maintaining 1,000 feet. There's the end of the runway. I'll start making my turn for downwind. Again, flying a right pattern here, maintaining 1,000 feet, using standard rate turns as best I can, trying to stay coordinated. Alright, let's say there's my downwind leg. Again, I'm not really correcting for any wind. I'm just flying it straight as if there is no wind. I did use real weather here, so there might be a little bit of wind, but anyway. Maintaining 1,000 feet. Again, I'll pull back on the throttle a little bit. Don't need to be speeding. I'm at 100 indicated, over 100 indicated. That's plenty fast for the pattern. Maintaining 1,000 feet. Looking over my runway that I'm going to be landing on should be about midway up my strut in the Cessna 172. Looks good there. Now the next cue that I'm looking for is the end of the runway. When I'm going to beam the end of the runway, beam the numbers of my landing runway, that's when I'm going to start configuring for landing. End of the runway is right there, coming up on that. Alright, let's say that's the end of the runway. First thing I'm going to do is carb heat if I've got it. This is fuel injected. But I'm going to pull back to 1,500 RPM, and I'm going to hold my pitch to let the speed come down to 80. And I get into flap range. Okay, there's flap range. I'm going to add 1 notch of flaps, and again, I'm pitching for 80. So I'm holding 80 here, nose down a little bit to keep that 80. Looking over at the runway when I want to make my base turn. Again, getting a little slow there, so I'll nose down, RPM up a little bit. When the airport's about 45 degrees behind us, we can go ahead and make our base turn. Again, getting a little bit slow here, already at base speed. So I'm making my turn to base. Again, using the directional indicator to roughly tell me when I'm turning perpendicular to the runway. I'll add a little bit of throttle. Okay, let's call that base there. Level off, put in the 2nd notch of flaps. And on base, I'm roughly pitching for 70 degrees. 70 airspeed, rather. So there's 70. Nose down a little bit to keep it right up at 70. Add a little bit of power. And I'm looking for the airport. There's my runway. And the numbers, again, roughly keeping it at 70. 500 feet AGL. Already coming up to 65 here, so getting a little bit slow. And I can start thinking about making my turn to final. I don't want to go too far because there is a parallel runway here. Definitely want to stay out of the way of that traffic. So I'll start turning a little bit early on final to 15 right. Okay, there's 15 right. I got the runway in sight. Start controlling my energy. Throttle back here a little bit. I'm looking for 65 or 60. Going a little bit fast. Height looks okay. Looking for somewhere between 65 and 60 here on my approach. And when I get a little bit closer, I'll add full flaps. I don't want to add that much drag quite yet. Aiming for roughly the numbers here. So I'll go ahead and add full flaps now. I've got the runway made. I can pretty much cut power to idle. And now I'm just going to round out and flare. Let the energy bleed off. That looked rough, but in real life, I don't think that would have been that rough of a landing. Okay, let's go flaps up, carb heats in. Trim set for takeoff. And we'll go full throttle and do another. This time we'll do, I'll change to runway 25. Alright, tower tells me to enter a right pattern from runway 25. I can go ahead and make my crosswind turn now. It's actually not a crosswind since I'm setting up for 25. There's UCSB. There's outbound in 25. That's the runway I'm going to be using now. We can say I'm on an upwind for 25. Again, going back to 1,000 feet, pattern altitude, direct over to 25, and I'll go ahead and use that to start making my crosswind, technically my crosswind turn for runway 25. I'll change my bug to 25 for this, if I can get it. Alright. Coming up on 1,000 feet. Alright, throttle back, trim nose down a little bit to maintain 1,000. And there is runway 25, that's the runway I'm going to be using. So I'm technically on a crosswind for 25 now. Okay, that's good separation. I'll start turning downwind for 25. Standard rate, coordinated. Alright, there's downwind. Roughly keeping that runway midway up my strut, Cessna 172. Looks good there as far as distance, separation. Flying 1,000 feet, downwind for 2.5. Right pattern. Looking for the end of the runway, my beam point. It's coming up. Okay, there's a beam carb out, throttle 1500. I used 1600, 1700 this time since I got a little slow and low last time. I'm gonna hold my pitch until airspeed drops to 80. Or white arc at least. Alright, once I get the white arc, first notch of flaps, and then I'm pitching for 80 at this point. So nose down a little bit, starting to come down. Keeping an eye on where the runway is. There it is. It's roughly 45 degrees behind me. I can go ahead and start making a base turn. And I can start nosing up a little bit because I'm going to be looking for 70 knots in my base leg. Okay, let's call that base. Go to the second notch of flaps. And I've got the runway in sight. And I can go ahead and start making my turn final. Watching my airspeed. Turned a little bit early, it's okay. And now on final, I'm looking for 60 to 65 knots. And again, I'm not going to add that final notch of flaps yet. It's just more drag than I want at the moment. I've got red over white, so that's okay. White over white, a little high. Airspeed's okay. I want to keep it above 60. Still don't have third notch of flaps in yet. Alright, I've got the runway made. I'll go full flaps and I'll go with throttle off, throttle idle. Let it come down. Start to level off, bleed off that energy. Flaps up, carb heat cold, trim set for takeoff. And that's it. That's generally what I use the fly pattern.